Well, inflation continues to exacerbate our cost of living crisis, and welfare payments are going to increase in September. The JobSeeker rate, which was due to rise $40 a fortnight, will now rise, $56 a fortnight from September, matching the 6-month inflation rate of 2.2%. Parenting and pensions payments are likely to rise by the same rate, but that is not guaranteed. A boost to rental assistance is on the cards too, of around $18 to $37 a week. But there are fears it will struggle to keep up. Well, that payment will not help families keep up with the rise in the cost of living anyway. Joining me live now is the Nationals leader, David Littleproud. First on this, we've had Jackie Lambie on the program this morning saying that, OK, raise the rate, but also do what the coalition has suggested, is allow people to work more before it affects their payments. Is that a good idea?
Well, we've been very clear. We think there's an alternative to giving $40. We think you can get $150 and not charge the Australian taxpayer. You can actually get business to be part of this. They'll contribute, they'll pay the wage, but they'll get productivity out of it, which is what the RBA governor is asking government to look at in their policy levers to make sure we're getting productivity. So we've made it very clear we'll put this alternative. We hope the government would consider it. Doesn't look like they will, and if they don't, then we're going to be pragmatic and we'll support the $40 going through the Senate. We think that obviously the cost of living crisis is hurting those that are on social security payments. They need some support, but we put an alternative. We've been constructive as an opposition. In fact, we took this to the Jobs and Skills Summit to allow veterans and those on the age pension to work longer, and the government took that up, but they don't want to broaden that policy. And that's unfortunate because I think that does make sense. That does make common sense. Instead of putting the burden on the Australian taxpayer, business can foot some of the bill, but they're getting productivity for it. That's common sense, and that's what the coalition's supported.
Well, it makes sense when you put it like that, certainly the pension, but it's been pointed out that a large percentage of people on this payment, on this welfare payment, don't work or are unable to work anyway. So what you're suggesting won't work.
Well, that's for that cohort. Now, obviously, we'll be pragmatic in working through the increase in the payments for others, but we've been very consistent on this. We've made it clear that we want to see productivity and making sure that we get as many of those long-term unemployed back into the workforce. And I think that's what we've got to pose our policy lens towards, to make sure that we're getting that long-term unemployed back, or starting them off into the workforce and keeping them in the workforce. That's, in essence, what will give greater productivity and increase our surplus, which the surplus this year was predicated not just on the resource and agriculture sector, it was predicated on the fact that we got more people off welfare and into a job.
Okay, so can I just be clear on this? When you're talking about the supplementary payments, being able to work before it affects your payment, are you talking mostly about the JobSeeker rate, or do you accept that that's probably not where you're going to get the most productivity?
Well, the JobSeeker is definitely where we're going to get the productivity, because you want people off JobSeeker and into the workforce. That's where the productivity, they're the able body that are able to go out and work. And I think we need to be obviously pragmatic and constructive also with those on disability pensions about not turning our back on them and getting them into the workforce as best we can too.
Disability pension, it might be a bit harder.
No, but I mean, even Dylan Alcott, who was at the Jobs and Skills Summit, made it very clear that we need to turn our focus as policymakers towards empowering those in disability pensions and with disabilities back into the workforce. There is significant roles that they can play. And I think Dylan made a very sensible suggestion around making sure that the proposal that we put forward is extended to those on disability pensions. And I think we should be proactive in trying to get everybody that is willing to get into the workforce, giving them every opportunity to do that. And I think Dylan has been a great advocate for that.
Yep, seems sensible. What about a boost to rental assistance? Is that something you'd support?
Well, we've got to look at that in the totality of what the government's proposing. There's supplementary supports, not just for rent, but for energy. And we need to look at that through the totality of the spend, and that's what we've been trying to be sensible about, because if you can build capacity into the back end and save, nearly $2 billion off the Australian taxpayer in allowing those on these social security payments to work more, then it gives you greater scope and capacity to support in other areas. So that's where you need to look in the totality of this, in being able to have pragmatic, common sense solutions in supporting those on payments to get through this cost of living crisis that's been created here in Canberra.
Okay, let me ask you about a few other things. Farmers in WA are particularly anxious over Aboriginal heritage laws. You were over there, I think, last week or the week before. Is there any chance in winding this back, and how do you see this, conflicting with the voice argument at the moment?
Well, this has created a lot of anxiety and fear when anywhere from 1,100 square metres, which is effectively a residential block in the outer suburbs of Perth, right through to agricultural land. If you dig a hole deeper than 50 centimetres, or you lift more than 20 kilograms of dirt in desilting a dam, which won't go far, you have to have a cultural survey, $120 to $160 an hour, $1,200 a day, and in a dispersed state, that's a big cost. And what Tanya Plibersek has is an options paper that will go into the realm of this, and we need to know the reach, and she needs to rule out that Western Australia won't be the benchmark. That'll be rolled across this country, and within the options paper, it gives a new Indigenous body, another Indigenous body, the power to prevent a development or to have it redesigned. Now, that is significant in terms of its reach and its power.
But Parliament still has control, right? Or the state?
Sorry, you just cut out.
Parliament or the states would still have control over that.
Well, the states will have their own individual cultural heritage acts, as Western Australia.
But that's got nothing to do with the voice, right?
No, well, I'm not saying it has. What I'm saying is that this in fact, is an overreach. And then if you were going to overlay that with a federal cultural heritage policy, how far-reaching that is. And I think the fact that Tanya Plibersek isn't prepared to demonstrate and show what far-reaching impacts this will have or won't, then that creates anxiety. And I think the fear and anxiety that's out there from the pastoral industry in Western Australia is fairly founded. And it's important that governments rule this out so that these issues can give confidence and they give certainty, investment certainty and confidence. Just because a big mining company did the wrong thing doesn't mean every Australian will undertake the abhorrent behaviour that they did. We shouldn't actually overreach. And in fact, all this is doing, particularly in Western Australia, is dividing many of the pastoralists with Indigenous Australians who have a very close working relationship, working hand in hand for years and generations in protecting their cultural heritage. And now this has done nothing but divide our community in Western Australia. When you're on the ground in Katanning and farmers don't normally protest, 600 of them turn up very angry about the imposition on their ability to do a lawful act, which is produce your food and fibre. That's a real concern that I think every Australian should have, and this is where we need certainty and leadership of government, and the Albanese government should give certainty that national policy won't be that far-reaching. Yeah,
look, absolutely, and I think doing damage to the Voice campaign, the Yes campaign in WA as well, because these two issues are being conflated. But I want to ask you about one more thing before I let you go, David Littleproud. A lot of anxious farmers around. Indonesia has just stopped importing live cattle because of, lumpy skin disease in livestock. How bad is it?
Look, I think we need to be calm on this. I think we'll demonstrate that Australia doesn't have lumpy skin, and the department, as I've been briefed yesterday, is working quickly to do the testing here in Australia to demonstrate that, and that the lumpy skin, which is prevalent in Indonesia, that the cattle that were in yards in Indonesia contracted lumpy skin in Indonesia, not in Australia. So I'm confident of that, but I think we need to let the science do the talking. We need some calm and understanding that Australia has all the measures in place, not just in preventing it, but if there was to be an outbreak, that we've got the measures in place to isolate and eradicate. But I'm confident that this didn't start in Australia, that in fact it was in Indonesia. But the Indonesians have rightly asked for us to demonstrate that. And I'm confident in our science that we'll be able to demonstrate, and the trade will be able to continue within a couple of weeks.
David Littleproud, good to talk to you. See you soon.
Thanks for having me.